I thought I had finally made it, the exact moment when everything was supposed to start getting better. For years, my life had been a string of almosts. Almost the promotion, almost the decent salary, almost the recognition. So when I saw the email with the subject line, "You've advanced to the next stage of the process," I read it 3 times just to make sure I wasn't imagining it. The company wasn't just any company. It was that company. The one people talked about in hushed tones. The one that bragged about values, innovation, and a human-centered culture. The one that, according to LinkedIn, changed lives. The position felt tailor-made for me. Great pay, stability, international growth. Even my parents, who had stopped getting excited about anything related to my career, smiled when I told them. The in-person interview took place in a flawless building, the kind that smells like expensive coffee and success. Glass everywhere, natural light, perfectly kept plants. No one raised their voice. No one looked stressed. "We really take care of our people here," said the receptionist with a practiced smile. "You'll notice." The first interviewer was friendly, almost too friendly. He talked about personal growth, about aligning values, about how talent without ethics was useless. I nodded along, relaxed. I felt like I fit in. Like, for once, I didn't have to pretend to be someone else. Then came the first hypothetical question. "Imagine an important client needs to close a deal urgently," he said, fingers interlaced. "The data isn't complete yet, but you know that if you wait, we'll lose the account." He paused, watching me closely. "Would you present the information as final, just this once?" I laughed nervously. It sounded like a trap, but also like something common. "I suppose, if it doesn't directly affect the final outcome," I answered carefully, "as long as it's not a serious lie." The interviewer smiled, but not the same way as before. He wrote something down in his notebook. "Interesting," he said, "not everyone answers the same way." The interview ended shortly after. He shook my hand, congratulated me on my profile, and said I'd hear back soon. When I walked out of the building, I felt something strange. I was happy, yes, but also uneasy. Like I'd said something I couldn't take back. I convinced myself I was overthinking it. It was normal. All interviews had weird questions. That night, another email arrived. "You've passed to the next phase." I smiled. I didn't know that would be the last smile I'd have for a long time. The second interview wasn't in the same building. That should have been the first warning. They summoned me to a smaller room on a floor that didn't appear on the directory. No receptionist, no plants, no background music, just a long table, 3 chairs, and a screen turned off. 2 interviewers were already there. They introduced themselves only by name, not by title. "Today we're not going to talk about your resume," one of them said. "We already know it." The other turned on the screen. A title appeared, "Practical Cases." "There are no right answers," he added. "We just want to understand how you think." The first case seemed simple. A hypothetical client had made a mistake that could cost them millions. Legally, the company wasn't required to warn them. Doing so would mean losing a strategic advantage. "Would you warn them?" they asked. I thought for a moment. If it's a critical mistake, yes. In the long run, the relationship is worth more. There was no approval or disapproval, just another note taken. The second case was different. "Suppose that same client trusts you completely," one interviewer said. "They ask for your recommendation. You know there's a better option for them, but it's not the one that benefits the company the most." I swallowed. "I'd tell them the truth," I replied. "If they trust me, I owe them that." The interviewer tilted his head, as if assessing an object. "Even if that puts your position at risk?" I didn't answer right away. Something new appeared. Pressure. Not aggressive, but constant, like an invisible hand pushing. "I guess you'd have to find a balance," I said at last. "Interesting," they repeated. "Always interesting. Never good." The third case was the one that truly threw me off. Imagine your boss asks you to adjust some credentials for a presentation. They explained, "It's not a complete fabrication, just an enhanced version. The client will never know. The team depends on this contract." They went silent. "Would you do it?" My first instinct was to say no. I felt it in my chest. But I thought about everything it had taken to get there. About how easy it would be to justify it. About how no one would get hurt. If it's just this once, I said, surprising myself, and if the final result is positive. The interviewer smiled for the first time. That shows flexibility, he said. We value that quality a lot here. When the session ended, they told me I'd passed the round, that not everyone made it that far, that I should feel proud. As I left, I saw another candidate waiting. She looked at me nervously. I wanted to warn her, but I didn't know exactly what to say. Hours later, the message arrived. You've been selected for a final team dynamic. Below it, a sentence I couldn't get out of my head. This is where we discover who you really are. They gathered 6 of us. 6 strangers sitting in a circle in a room with no windows. There were no tables, no computers, no folders. Just identical chairs and a camera in the corner, visible enough that no one could ignore it. They told us it wasn't recording, that it was only for protocol. No one questioned it. This isn't a competition, the facilitator announced in a calm voice. We're not evaluating results, but behaviors. She said behaviors as if it were an innocent word. The exercise started gently. Group decisions, abstract scenarios, nothing I hadn't seen before. Everyone spoke carefully, weighing every sentence. I did too, until they changed the rules. Now, she said, each of you will propose an action. The group will decide whether it's acceptable or not. She smiled. Remember, choosing not to decide is also a decision. The first person suggested hiding irrelevant information to avoid alarming a client. The group nodded. The second proposed pressuring a small supplier to meet impossible deadlines. No one objected. When it was my turn, I felt a knot in my stomach. I began, propose being transparent with the client. Explain the risks before it's too late. The silence was immediate. The facilitator raised an eyebrow. Even if that puts the team at risk? One of the candidates sighed, annoyed. That sounds good in theory, but we're here to win, right? Another added. If we all accept the rules of the game, someone has to do the dirty work. I felt the room closing in on me. It wasn't open hostility. It was worse, disappointment. As if I'd said something naive, childish. Would you like to reframe your proposal? The facilitator asked, kindly. Too kindly. I knew that question wasn't optional. I thought about the camera, about the earlier interviews, about the word flexibility, about how easy it would be to give in just a little, to adjust the wording. We could communicate it later, I said finally, when it no longer affects the operation. The group nodded, relieved. The tension vanished instantly. Better, the facilitator said, that shows adaptability. The exercise continued, but something had changed. Every time I hesitated, someone jumped in for me. Every time I tried to set a boundary, they looked at me as if I were slowing the group down. Then came the final activity. Now we'll choose a representative, the facilitator announced, someone who will defend an unpopular decision in front of a fictional client. She looked around the circle. The group has already decided who it will be. Everyone looked at me. No one said a word. They didn't need to. They handed me a script. In it, I had to justify a decision I knew was unfair. I had to deliver it with conviction, without hesitation. When I looked up, the facilitator was smiling. Don't worry, she said. If you don't do it, we'll understand that you're not ready to work as part of a team. I read the script. I took a deep breath. And I did it. When I finished, no one applauded. They just nodded, satisfied. Excellent, the facilitator said. You fit in perfectly. As I left the room, something froze my blood. They hadn't forced me. I had chosen to cross the line. And I didn't even know if it was the last one. The offer came too quickly. Less than 24 hours later, I received the email. We're pleased to welcome you to the team. There was no mention of salary, no start date, no schedule, just a link to complete pre-onboarding documentation. My hands were shaking. I should have felt excited. Instead, there was a weight in my chest, like I already owed something I didn't fully understand. I went back to the building. I didn't have an appointment, or a clear excuse, just an urgent need to confirm I wasn't imagining things. In the main lobby, everything looked the same. Smiles, coffee, inspirational quotes on the walls. But now they felt different, too polished, too rehearsed. While waiting for the elevator, a man stepped in beside me. He wore the same badge I'd seen on the interviewers, but his expression was tired. "New?" he asked without looking at me. I nodded. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Then you're still in time." Before I could ask what he meant, the elevator doors opened. We rode up in silence. When we stepped out, he took another hallway and disappeared, leaving that sentence echoing in my head. That night, I opened the link from the email. It wasn't just paperwork. It was an internal manual, corporate culture, operational principles. I started reading out of curiosity and kept going out of horror. They didn't talk about ethics. They talked about loyalty. Not transparency, narrative control. Every dilemma they presented to me was there, broken down, justified, normalized. The interviews hadn't been interviews at all. They'd been filters. One section froze my blood. Candidates who display moral resistance tend to become disruptive elements. I thought of the woman in the waiting room. Her nervous eyes. I never saw her again. I searched for opinions online, closed forums, deleted comments. But then I found something older, a former employee's testimony, buried years deep in forgotten pages. It described exactly what I had lived. The questions, the exercises, the soft but constant pressure. It ended with a line that took the air out of my lungs. "You don't realize what you're capable of until someone congratulates you for doing it." I closed the laptop. Suddenly, everything made sense. They weren't looking for good people. They were looking for people willing to bend without breaking, or worse, to break and keep working. My phone buzzed again. Final step before formalizing your onboarding. Below it, a single sentence. "We need to confirm that you fully share our values." And this time, I knew exactly what that meant. The final message didn't include documents. It included a meeting. No location details, no names, just a time and a subtle warning. "Your response will define your future with us." I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the windowless room, the camera, the script in my hands. And worse than that, the pride I'd felt when they told me I fit in. The meeting took place in a small office with no logos. Just a table, 2 chairs, and a closed folder waiting for me. The final interviewer entered without introducing himself. "We won't give you any more tests," he said. "We already know who you are." He opened the folder. Inside was a single document. "This is a real situation," he continued. "A client is about to make a serious mistake. If we intervene, we lose the contract. If we don't, the damage will be theirs, not ours." He looked straight at me. "We want to know if you can live with that." It wasn't hypothetical. It never had been. I thought about everything I'd given up to get there. How easy it had been to justify each small compromise. How, without noticing, I'd started thinking the way they did. "If I accept," I asked, "what happens if I say no?" He smiled, genuinely this time. "Nothing. It just means you're not one of us." I looked at the document. One signature, one small movement of my hand. The job of my dreams was inches away. And then I understood the final trap. They weren't asking me to betray my values. They were asking me to admit I already had. I slid the folder back toward him. "I can't." He didn't argue. He didn't look disappointed. He just nodded, as if confirming another data point. "Thank you for your honesty," he said. "It will save you many years." I walked out of the building without looking back. There was no immediate relief, only loss, doubt, fear, but also something I hadn't felt in weeks: silence. Months later, I learned the company had changed its name. New logo, same values. I kept looking for work. Slower, more aware. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd signed. But then I remember how easy it was to start giving in. And I ask myself one last question, the same one I now ask you. If the job of your dreams asked you to sacrifice your soul, at what point would you realize you already had?